Okay, this is a little bit different than I've usually done, and I was on the fence about actually addressing this, but I figured, you know something, maybe in me telling my story might help some people who may or may not have been subjected to the same fucking thing. What triggered this actually, and I do mean triggered, was Michael Berryman had sent me a copy of his book, and I had read it, and I read when he was talking about, him being in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I decided I wanted to see that just to check out his scene as he described it and check things out. Well, everything was cool until I got to the part where Jack Nicholson got the shock treatment. And that triggered me. Because as a 15-year-old kid, I was subjected to 9 shock treatments. And if you read my book, A Whole Bag of Crazy, I go over this in detail about what happened and how I was subjected to this thing. And you might ask what brought this on. Well, my parents were first generation Italian American. My grandparents came over from the old country, Italy, and came here, settled here. And basically, I was part of the post-WW2 baby boom. And this was the whole thing where, and this is another thing too I'll address. These guys came home from World War II with all kinds of problems that were never addressed because they didn't know anything about post-traumatic stress disorder, and they called it battle fatigue or whatever, or people were chicken shit or whatever. God's honest truth is these veterans saw and did a lot of horrible, horrible fucking shit. But they weren't helped. They were just thrown back into society, get married, raise a family, spit out 3 kids and whatever. And that's exactly what happened to me. My parents, were, like I said, Italian American. I was the first child. They were raised, in a Catholic thing, and I was sent to Catholic school, where I pretty much had the shit beat out of me every day by my classmates because I was a redhead. And when I went to fight back, the nuns would grab me and beat the shit out of me for fighting, telling me that Jesus didn't want me to fight. Well, obviously Jesus wanted me to get my ass kicked because that happened every fucking day. So, all 3 kids in a Catholic school, and the Catholic Church had a huge, huge fucking influence on families back then. And the whole thing was they were into corporal punishment. So like I said, I could get the shit knocked out of me for any minor infraction, whether it would be a slap across the face, hit across the knuckles with a fucking ruler, and punched and kicked by priests and fellow classmates. And as bad as I had it, I remember a kid in my class was basically beaten and tied to his fucking desk. And yeah, they could get away with this, private school. And the church, had a huge, huge sway. Well, what led to my segue to the problem was I got caught with an issue of Famous Monsters in my book bag, showing it to my classmates. Famous Monsters number 4 to be exact, which was ripped up right in front of me. I was basically marched to the front of the class and the nun tore the fucking thing up in front of me. I think you owe me about $1,000 by now. But anyway, I was sent home with a note for my parents that there was something wrong with me, that this wasn't normal. I should be interested in sports and shit like that. Well, I fucking wasn't. So the other thing was that, now you had 3 kids in Catholic school, and my father had started his own business, which he was lousy at, and money was tight, and they explained that to the church, and basically the letter from the Monsignor said, your financial worries aren't our worries, we have bills to pay. So I was taken out of that school and thrown into a public school, into the worst fucking class. So here's where the shit started, really in earnest. There was a demographic in that town, up the hill and down the hill. The people down the hill were the lower class, poorer people, mainly Italians. Somehow we managed to buy a house on the top of the hill. So you had, I'm going to say it, guineas on top of the hill weren't welcome. And this segued into a problem with a guidance counselor. And again, I wasn't into sports. I got shit for not going out to sports. I wasn't interested. It was that fucking simple. I played football when I was a kid. I did go out for football, but unfortunately I couldn't find shoes that fit me. They didn't want me there. It was that simple. And, I was harangued for all this shit. Well, the worst fucking thing I ever did, which got me into this situation, was I was into true crime for a while. And I got caught reading a book called Murder Incorporated, and that was it. Then I wrote a paper about it, and that was even more it. My parents were told I was abnormal, I needed help. So I was taken to a quack fucking psychiatrist who institutionalized me, and at 15 years old was subjected to 9 fucking shock treatments. And that sort of triggered me all last week, which is maybe why the last 3 shows I did weren't that fucking good, because I had this on my mind, because I'm thinking, how can parents do this to a child? And the answer is simple. Anybody in a power of authority back then was smarter than any of the parents. You know, the whole bit, the policeman is your friend, all this other fucking horse shit. Anybody in a position of power could get you fucked, and that's exactly what they did to me. And now, at this stage of my life, I have to realize that there was some damage done to me because, you know, I have this thing where I can't wrap my head around, you know, these gadgets like I had said before, and maybe that's it. I had to talk to some people about this, you know, because this isn't fucking good. And just the fact that people could do this to people back then and there was no repercussions, well, it kind of sucks and it's a little too late for me now. But maybe there's somebody else out there listening to this that maybe went through something similar, maybe was abused by the fucking system, because that's all it was, systemic abuse. That's all it was. And like I said, you know, in the Catholic Church, in the Catholic school, these people basically had the power of life and death over you. They could run home and tell your parents any kind of fucking shit that they wanted, and they would buy it, because nobody listened to kids back then. And, you know, people say, well, maybe corporal punishment was good. Well, maybe it is to a certain extent, but not to the point where you get the shit beat out of you and you get listened to a fucking quack that sticks you in a goddamn hospital where you get zapped. No, that isn't fucking cool at all. And believe me when I tell you this, I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just explaining a situation that happened to me in the hopes that maybe, and hopefully it never happened to anybody else, but I'm sure it did, and maybe somebody will understand this shit and understand that sometimes when people say they can't do shit, there's a fucking reason. They just literally can't fucking do it. And that's the story with me and smartphones and shit like that. So I know it sucks to hear something like this, and like I said, it's not a sympathy ploy, it's just part of fucking life, and if you want to really read about it, it's in a whole bag of crazy. I still have a few of them left, and like I said, that part of the book is not a pretty read, because I explain in detail what I went through with being given, you know, the shock treatments, the psychosomatic drugs, and all the other fucking crap. And let me tell you something, the drugs that they put me on, that thankfully I fucking got off, were worse than anything you could pick up on the street. And that's why I just stick to pot and stick to booze back then, because I knew how bad this shit was. So, unfortunately, this is my little slice of life horror story, and I just decided to share it with you and let the chips fall where they may. So, thanks for subscribing, thanks for tuning in, and if this succeeded in one thing, to making somebody aware of situations that were prevalent then so be it. So, until next time, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the flip side.